Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's January 8th. Today we celebrate the avid gardener who transformed the gardens at what was once the largest private residence in the United States. We'll also learn about the man who created many new citruses through hybridizing. And we'll hear some January advice from a Dig for Victory brochure from World War II. And we grow that garden library today with a fun fiction book set on an English estate called Winterfold. And then we'll wrap things up with the story of the man behind the Wagner tree. But first, I'd like to take a second to tell you about the Daily Gardener Friday newsletter. Every Friday, I send out the Daily Gardener newsletter, and it shows up as an email in your inbox. The newsletter is something I put together every week, and it has some very lovely content that I put together just for you. I'd like to start out the newsletter with some personal photos and updates, a little bit about what's going on around here in my own home and garden, with the hope that it inspires you and gets you thinking about your own space and garden in new and exciting ways. Then, I like to include some garden to-dos and creative resources, as well as little reminders for the month. And I'm a shopper, so I love sharing deals that I find with listeners of the show. And if you're a fan of the show, you'll also notice some favorite aspects from the podcast to help you get through the weekend. You'll see a little botanical history, some botanical poetry, of course, and a lovely list of all the featured books from the Grow That Garden library for the week. So handy. And I like to say, if you enjoy the podcast, you're going to love the newsletter. So head on over to thedailygardener.org and sign up for the free Friday newsletter today. Here's today's curated news. Today's curated news is from Snug Harbor, a cultural center and botanical garden that was founded with the execution of the will by Robert Richard Randall, who was an heir to a shipping fortune. He died back in 1801. And of course, you can find Snug Harbor on Staten Island in New York. Anyway, the good folks at Snug Harbor recently posted a tour that they're hosting. It's going to be tomorrow, January 9th, from 1 p.m. to 2:30, and they're calling it the Three Friends of Winter Tour. Now, I'm sharing this not because I think any of us are going to get to go, especially during a pandemic. However, I thought it was very interesting to hear about the three plants that are regarded as the three friends of winter. So let me read the description of this event to you, and then you can file it away in your garden miscellany. It says this: in Chinese culture, the three friends of winter are plants that are grouped together because they flourish during that season. And these have come to represent the ideal characteristics of the scholar, embodying the Confucian virtues of endurance, modesty, and fortitude. So they say, come see our pine, bamboo, and plum in the New York Chinese Scholar's Garden and understand why these plants are so deeply valued. What a wonderful topic. So again, pine, bamboo, and plum, the three friends of winter. And I'm going to post this event in the Facebook group for the show so that you can have a little reminder about this new term if it's new to you. And if you happen to live near Staten Island and can get away, this one sounds like a fun event to go to. Again, you can find this event in the free Facebook group for the show. So if you're looking for it, just type in the word friend and this post will pop up. That way you don't have to take any notes or track this thing down. It'll all be there for you. So the next time you're on Facebook Just search for Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend and then request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. Here's today's brevities. It was on this day, January 8th in 1828, that Eliza Ridgely married her fifth cousin and a son of a Maryland governor, John Carnan Ridgely. The couple lived on the Hampton plantation that was built by John's great-uncle, Charles Ridgely III, in 1790. And after it was built, it was the largest private residence in the United States. Eliza was the third mistress of Hampton, and she was an avid gardener. And during the decades following their marriage, Eliza and John had 5 children, and Eliza spent a great deal of time improving Hampton's gardens and landscape. In 1859, the horticulturist Henry Winthrop Sargent wrote that Hampton expresses more grandeur than any other place in America. He was not a fan of that grandeur. Henry preferred a more natural landscape. Hampton's garden landscape history dates back to the late 1780s when Captain Charles Ridgely acquired an Irish-born gardener and an indentured servant named Daniel Healy. Now, Daniel oversaw the Great Terrace's creation with its winding path and the 80 by 50 foot parterres that make up Hampton's falling gardens. Eliza left her mark on the gardens at Hampton by doing something completely different. She fell in love with the Victorian garden trend of carpet bedding, which leveraged plant colors to create designs like diamonds or circles. Other plants just provided contrasting colors. In his book, The Garden Triumphant, David Stewart said, "In the early Victorian bedding system, plant individualities were of no importance, each individual merely yielding the color of its flowers to the general show. The obsession with show was plants merely as a blaze of color. That was all." Now, regarded as an accomplished gardener and horticulturist, Eliza had grand garden dreams. She installed extensive gardens, and her love for carpet bedding would have been seen as a radical departure from gardening etiquette of the time, because before this trend, it was considered poor taste to plant a plant next to another one of the same color and variety. That was a big no-no. In fact, in 1839, Henry Winthrop Sargent issued another dig at Eliza's formal gardens when he said they quite disturb one's ideas of Republican America. He was not a fan. Over 4,000 acres surrounded Hampton House, and Eliza had more than enough room to develop impressive greenhouses, which, along with the lavish gardens, were tended by slaves. And many people who tour Hampton today are surprised to learn that. They were not aware that slavery existed as far north as Maryland. During their marriage, Eliza and John loved to travel, and on their journeys through Europe and Asia, Eliza collected exotic trees and plants for her Hampton gardens. Eliza's love of citrus trees led to the creation of an orangery to help her citrus collection survive the harsh Baltimore winters. And Eliza added specimen trees to Hampton's formal landscape. Today, a Lebanon cedar stands on the mansion's south lawn of the Great Terrace. And Ridgely family history says that Eliza brought the exotic tree to Hampton as a little seedling in a shoebox from the Middle East. Eliza also selected the white and pink saucer magnolias that bloom in the spring and the magnificent fan-leafed ginkgo at the corner of the house. But the oldest trees on the property are catalpas that predate the home. And although they are quite common now, Eliza brought urns to Hampton. Made of Italian marble, Eliza's fashionable urns surrounded the mansion. Now, during Eliza's lifetime, the urns would have been called vases, and they were meant to add classical beauty to the garden. In 1854, American Farmer magazine wrote that Eliza's gardens expressed more grandeur than anything in America. The magazine also admired her irrigation system, saying that, quote, "A reservoir at the mansion radiates to different sections in the garden where hydrants are placed, and by a hose, the entire garden can be watered at pleasure." Last summer, when all other places in the neighborhood were dry and barren, the flower garden at Hampton presented a gorgeous array of bloom. Petunias, verbenas, geraniums, and other summer flowering plants looked as though they lacked no moisture there. With the end of slavery after the Civil War, the Hampton estate fell into decline as the family struggled to maintain it. And a little while later, Eliza died at the age of 64, and she's buried in the family cemetery on the estate. Today, the Hampton estate is a National Historic Site. And if you go to visit it someday, it's worth noting that the plants today are different. Many of the plants that are on the property need to be deer resistant. As for the famous portrait of the long-necked Eliza Ridgely standing beside her harp, it was painted by Thomas Sully. It hangs today in the National Gallery of Art. And today is the birthday of the agricultural botanist and plant wizard Walter Tennyson Swingle, who was born on this day, January 8th, in 1892. Walter was a very popular botanist during his lifetime. He introduced the date palm to California, and he created many new citruses through hybridizing. In 1897, Walter made the first man-made cross of a Bowen grapefruit and a Dancy tangerine in Eustis, Florida. And in 1909, Walter created the limequat, which is a cross between the key lime and the kumquat. That same year, Walter created the citrangequat, which is a trigenic citrus hybrid of a citrange and a kumquat. Walter developed the citrange, which is a combination of the sweet orange and the trifoliate orange, as he was attempting to breed an orange tree that could withstand colder weather. Walter was born in Pennsylvania. He knew all about cold weather. His family quickly moved to Kansas, where Walter was homeschooled and ultimately educated at Kansas State Agricultural College. In short order, Walter began working for the government at the United States Bureau of Plant Industry in the Department of Agriculture, and the USDA immediately put Walter to work, sending him to nearly every country in the world. Walter brought Egyptian cotton to Arizona and Acala cotton to California. However, Walter's most significant accomplishment was the introduction of the date palm to America. The date palm was something that Walter discovered during a visit to Algeria. And this is how we know how clever Walter was. He was intelligent and observant, and he noticed that Algeria's climate and soil mirrored that of California. In fact, Walter was optimistic about the date palm's chances in California right from the get-go. And he wrote about it, saying, "No heat is too great and no air too dry for this remarkable plant, which is actually favored by a rainless climate and by hot desert winds. The date palm can withstand great alkali qualities in the soil more than any other useful plant. It's probably the only profitable crop that can succeed permanently." Now, when the date palm arrived in California, the Coachella Valley was identified as the perfect spot to grow them. And by 1920, over 100,000 pounds of dates were grown in California. Thanks to Walter Swingle, dates are one of California's main exports. And today, the total value of the date crop is approaching $100 million every single year. In Unearthed Words, today's words are from a Dig for Victory pamphlet from the Ministry of Agriculture back in January of 1945. Here's what it said. "January is a time when you should be thinking and planning, ordering your seed potatoes, vegetable seeds, fertilizers, and so on, and making sure that your tools are in good order and that you're ready to begin gardening in real earnest next month or as soon as local conditions will let you." It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, A Place for Us by Harriet Evans. This book came out in 2015, and it's a best-selling fiction book. Now, I bought this book a few years ago when I saw the beautiful alliums on the cover. I love alliums. And along with many of my fiction favorites, the cover is incredibly appealing to gardeners. A Place for Us is an engrossing novel about a woman who, on the eve of her 80th birthday, decides to reveal a secret that may destroy her perfect family. Kirkus Reviews wrote, "From an English estate called Winterfold, Martha Winter sends out invitations for her 80th birthday party with a puzzling statement. There will be an important announcement. We ask that you please be there." Only her husband David, a well-known cartoonist, knows what this announcement might be. The Winters have been fixtures in their Somerset village for 45 years, raising their 3 children, Florence, Bill, and Daisy. Told from the perspectives of various family members as they receive Martha's invitations, it's clear this family's story is full of unanswered questions. This book is 448 pages of a heartwarming, true-to-life family saga, and it's the perfect book to blissfully carry you away this winter. You can get a copy of A Place for Us by Harriet Evans and enjoy the beautiful cover and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $2. So I say, treat yourself. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. Today is the anniversary of the death of a leading botanist in the study of ferns, Warren Wagner Jr., who always went by Herb. He died on this day, January 8th, back in 2000. Herb was the founder of modern systematics for plants and animals. In fact, today, botanists still use Wagner trees to classify plants and animals based on presumed phylogenetic relationships and evolutionary history. DNA, hard at work. And it was Herb Wagner who once said, "Deer in the winter are nature's closest thing to actual zombies. They chew through everything in their path." Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Wyoming, Minnesota with the help of Paige Mance, Brooke Bierbaum, Kiana Rayleigh, Maddie Doyle, Natalie Decker, and Eric Begay. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media. You can follow the show on Instagram, and listeners always have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. All the stories and books that are featured on the show can be found over at thedailygardener.org, thedailygardener.org. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. Last but not least, you can share your own gardener greetings on the show by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.